This is the last place you'd expect to find a secret. Tucked away on the top floor of a nondescript building in Bletchley Park, England, there's a room with a heavy steel door. No one knows what's behind it, not even the people who work just feet away. It's been locked for decades. But here's the incredible part. Inside this mystery lies a piece of the past that helped end one war and start another. And you won't believe how close we came to never knowing about it. But before we reveal the secret behind this enigma, let's talk about its discoverer, Alan Turing. He was a mathematician, logician, and all-around genius whose idea sparked the beginning of the digital age. Imagine if someone had told him that one day kids would hold devices that let them access every bit of human knowledge in their pockets. He probably wouldn't have believed them because back in his day, computers were huge. For example, the analytical engine invented by Charles Babbage in 1837 took up an entire room. But despite their size, these machines could calculate anything. If given the right instructions, they were like the iPhones of the 1800s. But there was one big problem. They couldn't be programmed until the invention of software, which didn't come along until the mid-1900s. This meant that for over 100 years, computers were nothing more than expensive paperweights. That was until Alan Turing changed everything. He was born in London in 1912, but grew up in the countryside. As a kid, he showed signs of being different. For example, when he was just 4 years old, he was already figuring out how clocks worked. So it wasn't surprising that when he finished school, he went to Cambridge University to study mathematics. But even there, he stood out. One time during a class taught by the renowned mathematician and author of the code book, Simon Singh, called The Imitation Game. While everyone else struggled to understand the subject, Turing grasped the concept immediately. His teacher was so impressed that he asked Turing to come help him with a research project after class. It was there that Turing learned how to crack codes, a skill that would make him famous one day. Because when World War II broke out, he was recruited to Bletchley Park to break the German military code. At the time, countries communicated through telegraphs. The only issue was that these messages were sent in plain text, meaning anyone could read them. So each country created a way to encrypt their messages so only their allies could understand them. For example, to send the message "attack tomorrow," they might use something called a Caesar cipher. With this method, you shift each letter 3 spaces down the alphabet. So attack becomes D, execute, rabbit, and so on. In this case, attack tomorrow becomes GN, RXF, GN, OLT, true, DVS, OLJ. Not exactly hard to crack, but the Germans created something much more secure. It was called Enigma, a machine that used rotors to generate billions of letter combinations every second. Because there were so many possibilities, it seemed unbreakable. That is until Turing stepped in. Now, to understand what he did next, we need to take a step back and look at how humans have deciphered secret messages. Throughout history, in the olden days, they relied on something called frequency analysis. For example, if you're really trying to decode a message and see the letter E more often than any other letter, you can assume that it's the most common vowel. With enough frequency analysis, you can crack the code. But it takes a lot of time, especially when dealing with something like Enigma. That's why Turing needed a shortcut, a way to sift through all the possibilities without having to go through them all by hand. And that's where his brilliance shone. He designed the bomb machine, an early computer that could test thousands of possibilities at lightning speed. Imagine giving your iPhone a task and it finishing in less than a second. That's how fast the bomb was. With this new tool, Turing and his team started to crack Enigma, but they didn't know it yet. To see how they pulled off this feat, let's check out some of the crazy machines they built. They look like giant typewriters, but instead of printing letters, they generated them, creating encrypted messages on paper tape. From there, another machine called a Heath Robinson would punch holes in the tape, transforming the letters into numbers. These were then fed into a machine called a Colossus, which was capable of calculating millions of potential codes per second. To put that in perspective, it was like watching someone solve a Rubik's Cube in less than a second. These machines took up entire rooms and produced huge amounts of data, but Turing's team was able to sort through it all by hand, identifying patterns and finding matches. They then fed this information back into the bombs, allowing them to crack even more codes. By the end of the war, they had broken over to 100,000 encrypted messages, which allowed the Allies to track enemy movements and launch surprise attacks. Historians say this shortened the war by 2 years, saving millions of lives. But for those involved, the impact was more profound. For example, one day, Turing and his team intercepted a message from Germany asking them to stop production on a new deadly weapon. Little did they know that it was a trap to see if anyone was listening. The Germans hadn't realized that the British had cracked the code, so Turing and his team kept production going, deceiving the Germans and helping the Allies win the war. But when it was over, no one knew about any of this. You see, the British government wanted to keep secret how they defeated the enemy, so they banned those who worked at Bletchley Park from talking about what they did. This meant that for decades, Turing and his team were working in silence while the fate of the world hung in the balance. No one knew it, not even their families. But this secrecy took a toll on Turing. Just 2 years after the war ended, he was fired from his job at Bletchley Park. The reason? He was gay. Back then, homosexuality was illegal in Britain and the government feared that he could blackmail them. So they gave him a choice, prison or exile. He chose exile. In 1954, he moved to Switzerland and started a new life. But 2 years later, he was back in England. One day, he found out that someone had stolen some of his research papers. Fearing that they might leak secrets about Enigma, he reported it to the police. When they found the culprit, a young man who had taken the papers to show them to a friend, Turing confessed that he had done the same thing in the past. He was arrested and given a choice again, prison or exile. This time, he chose prison. Before entering, he asked his family to keep quiet about his past work. He didn't want anyone to know that he was a hero of the war. So once he was inside, the government kept secret why he was there. This meant that for the next 2 years, Turing lived in prison without anyone knowing the truth. In 1954, his father visited him, but he still had no idea what Alan had done during the war. It wasn't until 1972 that the British government declassified documents revealing the truth to the public. Overnight, Alan Turing went from being a prisoner to a national hero. But he never got to enjoy his newfound fame. You see, while he was in prison, the government forced him to undergo hormone therapy to change his sexual orientation. The treatment made him sick and he died in 1954. But the legacy of Alan Turing lives on. Can you imagine a world without computers or the internet? Without Turing, that might have been our reality. So next time you log onto your device, take a moment to remember the man who made it possible. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Secrets of the Past. We hope you enjoyed learning about the amazing discoveries made by Alan Turing and his team at Bletchley Park. Their work was instrumental in shortening World War II and saving countless lives. If you want to learn more about history's hidden heroes, don't forget to hit subscribe for more untold stories that shape our world. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.